Welcome back to Both Sides of the Bed. I'm your host, Kemesha Salmon, and today we're diving into a topic that so many people throw around casually, but don't always understand: narcissism. We hear it in corners, in conversation, on social media, in relationships. Oh, he's such a narcissist. She's such a narcissist. But is it always or really narcissism? Or are we misplacing behaviors that don't fit the actions or the definition? To help us unpack this, I'm joined again by my good friend and therapist, Noelle Elia, with over 30 years of experience in the mental health field. She's here to help us unpack, and go through a lot of real, what's misunderstood, and how it shows up in our lives. We'll talk about the difference between a healthy, confident person and a narcissistic person, how it impacts family, relationships, and even the workplace, and what it really takes to heal after being narcissistic or neglected, or even for someone that has these traits that's not aware or would like to get help from it. So please help me welcome again Noelle Elia.
Thank you, Kemesha. You mentioned this subject to me, and I thought, wow, I want to start before you probably have some questions
Yes.
for me. And you usually ask me wonderful questions, and I'm always ready to answer them. But I did want to do a little qualifying before we start in on that
Yes.
with this particular subject, because I'm sure most people that are watching are familiar with how something like ADD or ADHD is overdiagnosed or talked about very casually. There's a kid in class who hard for him to sit still, always got ADD. And unfortunately, sometimes he's even medicated, and it's not even ADD. So we're not talking about ADD today, but we are talking about something else that is often miscategorized
Yes.
and misunderstood. So initially, I want to qualify this by saying there is a difference between someone with a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how that would be diagnosed. There's a difference between that and someone with some narcissistic traits. Now, even if you're in a relationship with someone with some traits who doesn't have the actual disorder, it can be difficult to be in a relationship with someone with some of those traits. So we'll talk about that. So in order to diagnose someone with a narcissistic personality disorder, they need to have 5 of the 9 characteristics that are listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Mental Health Manual, which is called the DSM.
Okay.
They list 9 traits. If someone has 5 of those traits, and if those traits seem to be very non-malleable, in other words, they seem very fixed, it doesn't seem like the person can move away from them, and then they have a narcissistic personality disorder. But there are many people who have a couple of those traits, but maybe they could change. Let me say this. People can change if they want to change.
Okay.
But
They do the work.
one of the problems with narcissism is that the person doesn't think there's anything wrong with them because of the narcissism. Okay? So it actually gets in the way of self-reflection. People can't change if they can't self-reflect. And even someone with some narcissistic traits that doesn't have the disorder may really struggle with self-reflection. And that can be very, very much in the way of a motive to change. Okay? So
Okay.
I just want to say that.
Okay.
For the sake of this discussion, I think that we'll talk about people with the traits
Okay.
that may not have, a full-blown disorder that can still get in the way. One of the things that I just want to also mention is, maybe you're going to ask me this, but in case you don't, how does a person develop this kind of personality or even these traits? And there's sort of a very basic line. And again, it's quite basic, so it doesn't cover everything. But essentially, the person in their developmental years was either overindulged, where they where they were led to believe that they could do no wrong, that anything they did was just fine,
Okay.
or they were raised by someone with a disorder.
Okay.
So they were modeling that kind of behavior.
Interesting.
Or they were underindulged. They were neglected.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
neglect in more recent years in the mental health field has been considered to be abuse, and there's been some controversy around that. If someone is neglected, how is that they've been abused? And that's because people think of abuse as overt behaviors like physical abuse. However, neglect of a child, think about it, is a form of abuse. A child deserves to be taken care of.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So I just wanted to sort of start out with that and say that if someone is overindulged or underindulged, underindulged or neglected, either way, they don't develop a healthy ego strength.
Okay.
They don't develop what they need to be in the world in a balanced, non-fearful way. People who are overindulged are fearful that someone is going to take that from them, and people who are neglected don't think they deserve anything. So either way, their ego is not in a balanced, healthy place.
All right. Well, thank you, Noelle. So let's jump right into how that shows up in their adult life. So let's start at the top.
Okay.
What are the core traits of narcissism?
Okay. That's a good question, because I'm going to mention like 3 core traits that could be the traits that someone has even if they don't have the full-blown disorder, but they're traits that can really get in the way of relationships. One of those traits is that they believe they're better than everyone else. There's like a grandiosity there, and that definitely creates a sense of entitlement and an arrogance.
So they believe that they're a gift to the earth, I guess.
Well, I mean, some can take it that far and think that they're a gift to the earth, but even thinking that you're better than other people, generally, can create a sense of entitlement. And because of that, I'm allowed to do whatever I want. I don't even, in fact, some of the rules don't apply to me, and it definitely can create an arrogance. Now, that doesn't mean that every arrogant person is a narcissist, but arrogance is definitely a core trait. Another is that person tends to need a lot of admiration. They need to have their fragile ego fed. And by the way,
so they're very egotistical then.
Yeah, because they need to have that fed. Because underneath it is really a very low self-esteem and a very sense of insecurity. Another very problematic core trait is they lack empathy. Now think about that.
Yes, that one I know.
Yeah, think about that. When someone lacks empathy for other people, it really is very hard to be in relationship with them because they don't ever think that you're suffering. There's a expression that therapists would sometimes use around people who actually have a narcissistic disorder. They're never suffering. Everyone around them is.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Okay.
That's a good question.
All right. So I think a lot of us would like to know the difference between a healthy, confident person and a narcissistic person. So what's the difference? How can I know? Because I think I'm very confident. I don't think I'm narcissistic. So what is the difference? How can you identify the difference?
That's a very good question. A truly confident person has a healthy ego. They don't need someone to constantly be admiring them or telling them how great they are. They just know that they're basically a good person. They don't necessarily think they're better than everyone else, but they're confident about who they are. And a person with a healthy confidence wants other people to shine, Kemesha.
Yes.
They
And
don't want to
we
be
don't
the
require
only,
validation. I'm sorry to cut you off. We don't require validation because I don't require validation.
and
Okay.
and they don't want other people to make other people lower than them
Okay.
so that they can
Okay,
feel
feel-
better. They don't
okay.
need to do that.
Okay.
In fact, they want other people to shine and also have healthy self-esteem because they're not threatened by the other person's healthy self-esteem.
Okay.
Does that
Yes.
answer it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Here's another big one.
All right.
Does a narcissist know they are a narcissist?
Yeah. That's interesting. You know, what's interesting about that is this. A person who's narcissistic never wants to label themselves in any negative way. Okay? So they may know that they're narcissistic, but that wouldn't be bad. It would be like, well, sure, because I know how great I am. So they wouldn't see that as a negative. You know, if in fact they're aware of it.
That's very
They wouldn't
interesting.
see it as a negative. Now, if they see it as a negative, they would never admit that that's what they are.
Okay.
Because it's very hard for them to see anything that they're doing as problematic. It's always everyone else that's got the problem. If you get my drift. And this is why you keep saying, wow, this is a very therapists often struggle very much. When someone comes in, it's very hard to have them stay in therapy. Why? The instant their behaviors are challenged, they flee therapy.
Okay. Okay.
Now, if someone I've had people in my office who have some of these traits. And when I challenge them, they may not flee because they don't have the full-blown disorder. So they'll challenge what I'm challenging, and we'll wrestle a little bit, and they may miss the next couple of sessions, but they may come back because their spouse or their family saying, you got to stay with it because you're driving us crazy. So they may come back, and they may be willing to change over time because they have some of these traits, but they're more malleable.
What about those people that will say, I'm broken, I know I'm broken, I'm working on myself, but they never work on themselves?
Yeah. Well,
So they admit it. I'm not saying they admit to being a narcissist, but their behavior where they discard people very easily. They use other people. I feel that narcissist uses empaths. So when someone is showing up for them, because I'm very empathetic, so you want to be there, you want to show that you care, but they'll say, I know you're there, I want to help, but right now I'm just broken and I'm just working on myself without working on themselves. What about those people? Are they aware and just don't want to get help and just want to drag you on? Or
that's a great question. A lot of people wonder about that. What is the motivation of someone who keeps saying I'm getting help, but they're not really getting help? It might be to just try to convince. They're not being honest with themselves in a lot of cases. It might be to just try to convince themselves.
I think they say to keep the next person around.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna get help.
Oh, well,
your help.
Now you're bringing up something called manipulation,
Yeah.
and that's a very big part of
Narcissism.
that can be a trait that a narcissistic person, certainly, in fact, it is a trait of someone with the disorder.
Okay.
It can be a trait of someone who doesn't meet all the criterion, but you notice you're being very manipulated and you're being used interpersonally.
Yes. Okay. Wow.
And in order to use someone interpersonally, not only do you lack empathy, you might have an underdeveloped conscience because it doesn't bother you that you're exploiting the person.
Yes, they don't
Doesn't
care.
bother you.
Yeah. They actually brag about
Hard
it.
to believe
Yeah.
that someone wouldn't care about exploiting someone, but they don't.
That's what let me know that person was narcissistic. I don't know all the traits, but it was
But
that
that's-
behavior where you said there's something wrong with you, but you're not changing it. But you'll say anything just to keep that line open.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like they'll say anything to get what they want because they don't care about you. As long as their ego is being fed, as long as they're getting what they want out of that situation, that's what I I've seen for people that I think is a narcissist. I don't know if they're diagnosed, but the behavior and the traits definitely shows up.
Yeah.
So my next question is, how does that show up in different spaces? So, for example, family, workspace, and in their life overall. How does that show up in like in a family dynamic and even the workplace?
Well, a person who is very selfish in their family life, for example, would just always put their own needs before the collective needs of the family.
Okay.
Or before the needs of even one other person in the family. You know, the kid has something important, but they want to do something else. Even an adult, they want to do something else, and they'll put their needs before the needs of the child. Or the whole family feels one way about something and wants to do something a certain way, but they don't. So they're like the tyrant running things in the family, and it has to be done their way or the highway. You know, again, it's not necessarily a narcissist, but it's a selfish person. And it certainly shows up in a way that isn't conducive to the collective needs of everyone in the family. It can be the same way in the workplace. You know, in a workplace, you're usually part of a team. And if you don't carry your weight, but you just because you feel like things should be done a certain way and others don't, then, you know, you're not going to be a good team player. Narcissistic people are not good team players. They're too self-absorbed.
Guys, I'm sorry. This is it's so much knowledge. It's just the fact that I deal with so many people with these traits, and I'm like understanding why they behave that way.
Okay.
And then I'm realizing like maybe I can't even help them. They probably need, you know, professional help. So this goes to my next question. The psychological toll this can take on someone in a relationship with a narcissist. I'm talking about, you know, if you're in a relationship with one, what does that do for your self-esteem, anxiety, or even isolation? Because I know when you're dealing with a narcissist, isolation is a big part of them doing that to hurt you, if I'm correct.
Oh, you mean they try to isolate you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, now let me just take one little side panel here about something called domestic violence. Most people that are the perpetrators of domestic violence certainly have some narcissistic tendencies or not traits, and might even be narcissists. And there, you know, the scene with domestic violence, you're really trying to keep the person from family, friends, everybody, so they're under your control. Some people call it a one-on-one cult when it's really taken to the max. And there's a lot of gaslighting in domestic violence, and there's a lot of gaslighting even, and again, domestic violence can be emotional. It doesn't have to be physical. You're beat up, you're thrown into the hospital. It can be emotional domestic violence. Now, when you are in a situation like that, you're often being gaslighted. Just in case people aren't sure what that means, that's thrown around a lot too, gaslighting. Gaslighting came from a movie in the 1930s where a man was trying, it's an old black and white movie, I think it's called Gaslight, where the man was trying to get his wife institutionalized because he was involved with someone else and he wanted to steal all her money and be with the other person. So he at the time, there were no electric lights. There were just gas lamps. And he would turn them all out. And then she'd say, "What happened? Why are all the lights out?" And he'd say, "The lights aren't out." "What do you mean?" And he was convincing her that she was crazy.
Yes.
If you talk to anyone who's been in a domestic violence relationship, they start to think that they're crazy. Now, it doesn't take anything that drastic. If you're involved with someone who's manipulating your reality, and you start to wonder if your reality is actually fair or right or true, that's a sign that you're being gaslighted. Some people feel like right now, a lot of us are being gaslighted in the United States of America by getting information about current events that makes absolutely no rational sense, and we're being told that it does. So there are politicians and people who are talking about how the whole damn country's being gaslighted.
Yes.
However, to get back to just a relationship that you might be in your house or in your life with friends, if you start really questioning on a regular basis, gee, I think this makes no sense, but they're telling me it does.
Something is wrong.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
And usually if you go to another friend who's not in it and you say, what do you think of this? They'll say, you're being gaslighted.
Wow. Okay. So we brought Noelle in today because I've received so many emails about this topic of narcissism and narcissistic people. So now I'm going to be reading a lot of the questions that was sent in, so Noelle can answer these questions for our listeners. So
Okay.
I was asked, I felt so bad for this person. I won't indulge in, their situation, but
Okay.
this person wanted to know, why do they stay? Why do people stay in relationship with narcissists even when it's clearly unhealthy? This person explained to me that she knows it's unhealthy. She's not happy. The same thing you just said, gaslighting, isolation, where that person will go days without speaking to them. And then when you go days without speaking to someone, even when they are wrong, you can't wait. You start to apologize for something you didn't even do. And I'm not sure if that's narcissistic traits, but
Yes.
that's what this person explained to me. And my heart goes out to you, but this person wanted to know, why is it that they stay?
Okay.
Even though she knows it's unhealthy.
This happens so much, and it happens, which is hard to believe, it happens with people who in every other area of their life, they are competent. They may be competent at work, they may be competent in their parenting, they may be something happens when you're in quotes, a love relationship or a romantic relationship, which I'm sort of assuming this is.
It's a marriage.
So, okay, yes. Something happens there where we don't carry all our competence in the other areas of our life there, because one thing that can happen a lot is, if I just love them enough, they'll change. This is a myth. It's never true.
They won't change.
But right. And the other thing is, it's a personality characteristic that's been embedded for a person's lifetime. By the time they're, 30, 40 years old, 50 years, I mean, it's an embedded characteristic. They can change if they want to. Sometimes someone, if it's a husband and wife thing here, is it that kind of relation,
Yes.
heterosexual? Is it the wife that asked you this?
Yes.
Yes.
And what I said to her was, in my study, maybe it's a trauma bonding, something that she went through as well. That,
Yes.
that
that's
it's like a
great,
hope.
Great
It's
point.
a hope. Thank you. She's hoping for change even in the manipulation, because I
That's
feel
right.
she's been manipulated and it's been years.
Yes.
So you're in it and you think he's going to change. You think he's going to change. You have
Yes.
children with this person. You
Yes.
think they're going to change.
Yes.
But it's just getting worse.
Yes.
And the problem also in this marriage is he seeks sexual gratification from everyone else. And if she doesn't give it to him, it's like she's the problem. She's like, but I'm here. But I told her, I said, you're not the problem.
Oh, yeah, no,
he's
this
going to
is-
do that regardless. Like,
Yes.
this person is going to
Yes.
go out there.
Yes.
And because, again,
Yes.
he
Putting her life at risk.
Yes. Strike that ego. You want that ego building.
Yes.
This is the person that works out all the time. The person looks good. And that's a part of a lot of
This sounds
egotistical
very
people, very
narcissistic.
narcissistic. They look good and they're feeling, I'm a prize. So what I said to this person, I said, what did you go through that you felt? Because I feel like it's trauma bonding while you stay. Because if I felt that if this person was healed, they wouldn't stay.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that word up. It's
Yes.
very important and it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
The idea of trauma bonding, your own trauma's being played out, you don't feel you deserve better, or you think maybe if you just hang in there long enough, you'll change it. There's something called reenactment in psychology, where we have some experience in our background, and then later on in life, something comes up that feels similar. It's not the same
Not the
thing,
same. Okay.
but it feels similar, and we think if we can just hang in there and change it now, we can master the thing that happened back then.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really quite a bit a part of trauma bonding. And you're so right. A healthy person with healthy self-esteem,
Will not
healthy
stay.
enough self-esteem, would not tolerate that. But there are people, it's amazing, who really in other areas of their life are competent and their esteem is high.
Yes.
But when it comes to an intimate relationship, they're so shaken by their past that they can't get past it. So that's very, very sad. This person
Yes.
has to realize she's not going to change him, but she can change. And listen, it sounds like there's a lot at stake, but it doesn't mean it's impossible to get out. Unless, and even if he's threatening her life, I've known people that have moved across the country. In any case,
Aw,
yeah,
that's sad.
it's horrible.
So, from your professional background, I'm going to share with you what I shared with this person. And I said, I have done the work to heal myself. And when you do the work to heal yourself, you know your value. And when you know your value, you know your boundaries and
Yes.
you know what you would accept.
That's right.
You've accepted this behavior for years. So I told her, if you want to know why, you have to go to get the deep core of why you allow it. That's the biggest part. Because if
Absolutely.
you allow, whatever you allow will continue. We know that in every situation. And my heart is broken for her because, again, she is not the breadwinner. He is. That's another part of it.
I understand.
Where for you to get up and leave, and this person, they know you're not going to leave because that's the control. That is the control.
I
know,
understand and agree.
But I feel like I couldn't be with a narcissist. I say I'm too strong. No, not that I'm too strong. I'm too healed.
Yeah.
Because I've worked on
Too
myself.
conscious.
Very, very. So I attract healthy, you know? So I had to let her know, you get to the core of you. Because when you get to working on you, I promise you, you will not allow it.
There's no question about it. That's perfect advice, Kemesha. There's no
Thank
question
you,
about
Noelle.
it. Yep.
Okay. All right. I want to go to the next question.
Okay.
This person asks, in your view, are narcissists more ego-driven or wound-driven? It's a two-part question. Are they ego-driven or wound-driven? And how do early experiences, I think you touched on this at the beginning.
Yeah.
And how do early experience or trauma play into this? You addressed that in the opening, but I just want you to touch on, is it more ego-driven or wound-driven? More like a trauma?
Well,
or the trauma turns into ego? Like, just...
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay.
The egotistical person is like that because the base wound has not been dealt with.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It's woundedness. Now, what this can do, this is really important. Knowing that that it's coming from wounds, knowing that the person has their own trauma, can absolutely bring compassion to the situation. However, one can have compassion for someone and still say, I got to get out of here.
Okay.
Okay? They're not mutually exclusive. Having compassion doesn't mean sticking around to get beat up more.
Yes.
It means, wow, I got to leave, but I hope someday they get it together, but I can't stay here and go down with the ship.
You just have to say you don't deserve that. And,
Correct.
And they don't deserve it either. Okay. All right. And our next question. This is a good one. I spoke
They're
about
all
that to
good.
my
These are the
clients.
people. That's great.
What boundaries actually work with narcissists? And how can someone avoid being pulled into manipulation or gaslighting? So I wanna touch on this,
Please.
on my end. When it comes to boundaries, I'll say again, you have to know what you deserve.
Yes.
If you get a narcissist, for example, you have a narcissist that's trying to date you. If you have boundaries on what it takes to be in a relationship with you, I'm not saying you won't be manipulated. I'm not saying you won't be gaslighted, but their actions won't match their word.
Well, if your standards are clear, you won't even engage. You won't end
even
up with them.
Yes, because they won't go through it. Because it's what they want. It's always what I want. I feel like when it comes to narcissists, it's their way or the highway, and they discard people very easily because they're looking for the next person to feed
The
it.
next hit.
The next, so that's it. It's like the next high. And so I feel when it comes to boundaries, if you know what your clear boundaries are, you won't get sucked in.
Correct.
And you can care. If you get to the point where, I care about this person, it goes back to what Noelle just said. Hey, I care, but I'm going to step back because you don't really care to get help.
Well, absolutely. The thing is, now you remind me of something, because you're talking about a marriage in the earlier question.
Yeah.
There's something that's being thrown around a lot today, and I think there's something to it. It's called covert narcissism.
Yes.
And this is real, because people get into relationships. They've known the person quite a while. They even marry them, and they don't see it until later, because the person, and often, and especially in cases of domestic violence, the person gets involved heavily with them because initially they're treated like a complete queen, princess, whatever word you want to use, and then the person turns on them later.
Yeah.
And this can go on for a couple of years. It's not like, oh, I was with him 6 months and then he certainly became a monster. No, they can fake it for a while. That's that covert stuff. Wow. Now, when you're older and wiser, you can sort of see, wow, this feels like overkill. And you know that it's too much, so it's covering something. But when you're young, you don't see that.
Okay. You're not looking for it.
Right? No, not
that, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So how can you avoid being pulled into a manipulation and gaslighting? As we said earlier, just your boundaries, knowing the sign and knowing what you're not gonna accept.
Right.
Simple. And I think we all know when someone is treating us right. And if you don't know if someone is treating you right, again, that's you.
Yes.
You have to work on you. I always, this is the saying I say with everyone I talk to. I have done the work on myself. I can't allow anyone to let me step back into a world where I wasn't sure of who I was.
Right.
I don't need the validation because I've validated me. I've worked on, I've healed myself.
Yes.
Through therapy, spiritual, fasting. Yes. I've done the work. So I feel like when it comes to being manipulating and gaslighting, you should know if you've done the work and what you know what you're going to accept. Okay. And another question, I think we touched on this earlier. Can a narcissist truly change? Oh, no, Noelle. Yeah, I want you to answer this one. Can a narcissist truly change? And what would meaningful change look like?
Oh, okay.
I think you touched on this in the
touched
opening, but I want you to,
I like, there's a therapist that I followed for years. He does couples work. His name is Terry Real. And he talks about things being either relational or non-relational, generally. And I think you can tell if someone's changing if their behaviors now are taking you into consideration or allowing you to have your own opinion, and they're not threatened by everything that doesn't match what they want. There's a tenderness and an openness and an open heart in someone that's relational. And in someone that's non-relational, like you say, it's their way or the highway. It's very rigid. It's very controlling. And if someone is rigid and controlling, you'll notice a change if they stop doing that. And again, sometimes, see, now this particular, in marriages, I would often have people, I would often have couples come, and it was often the woman who wanted to, however, I had a couple of situations where the man's complaint was that his wife was really narcissistic, and she was. And so it's not always gender, informed. However, our culture raises women to be to hold back on their own talents and gifts and worth, and raises men to try to shine and be big and bad. I mean, that's just what our culture does. The gender socialization is a part of how women and men are. That's for sure. But in terms of changing, sometimes someone will come in and say, if I don't change, I'm going to lose my marriage, and I don't want to lose my marriage because it really means something to me. That person might have some selfish traits, might be a pain in the ass, but may not be a narcissist.
Because they can identify.
They can identify.
I don't want to lose my family.
I don't want to lose my family, and they can self-reflect enough to know, wow, I think I could lose my family, and that would really be bad. Now, I don't know what would happen in the case that you mentioned in question 1 if that woman said, I'm leaving, and meant it, and figured out a way to do it, financially and other ways. I don't
think
know
he
if
would allow it.
Wouldn't allow it. Now, would he
Because
harm her physically?
I'm not sure, but I'll say she said he has a tendency of, in the household, like I am, like he's the boss. That's it.
Yeah, right.
He's above all.
Yeah, king.
So yeah, he's a king. So if she's trying to leave, it's like, oh my God, you're leaving me. I don't think she's ever tried, but I don't think she thinks it's possible. Because he does everything he wants to do.
Well, I understand.
And she fears him.
The thing is, is it not possible because of her finances, which again...
That's an addition.
Okay.
I think a part of it is also fear. The unknown.
Well, right, but does she... And what I remember doing often in my work, especially when I was working in clinics, is there actual danger? Because if there is, then we have to make a different kind of plan.
Yes.
If there's not actual physical danger, but you're afraid he's just going to be pissed, that's different. That's different, Kemesha.
Okay. That's different.
But you have to respect actual physical danger. Some people own weapons. You don't know. I mean, this stuff happens.
Oh, wow. Okay. I hope you're listening. Yeah. Okay. And if you feel like that situation is dangerous because of physical fear rather than more emotional,
you need to connect.
You need to do something. Yeah. Connect with a real therapist.
Yes.
And figure it out. And they have children, so
yes, I understand.
Okay. And I have a question to add to that, because I've always said I tell everyone you need to go to therapy. But I spoken to someone the other day, and they're like, Kemesha, therapy. A lot of narcissists, they won't go.
Correct.
Again, because they don't think nothing is wrong. But if this person decided, you know what? I'm not happy. I can actually identify that I'm not happy, that I am a narcissist. I have that trait. Can they actually go to therapy and get help?
It depends. To me, the person living with a narcissist is the one that should go to therapy and figure out what they're going to do about this. You know, the narcissistic person that goes to therapy, as I say, often will go to a couple of sessions. They'll try to manipulate, absolutely, and manipulate and exploit the therapist. Now, the therapist has to be very hip to this kind of personality when they come in. In fact, sometimes it's well, I'll just leave it at that. The therapist has to be very aware of these kind of personalities, because therapists can be manipulated.
All right. Another question. For someone recovering from narcissistic abuse, I think you just you touched on it a little bit. What role can therapy and community play in healing?
Well, the person who's been involved in being manipulated and exploited by someone who's narcissistic, as you mentioned earlier, in order to have, I'm not going to say in order to have, anybody can become, I think most people, especially when they're young, can become a victim to this. The thing is, when you see it, what do you do about it? Okay. And if they can, get out of it. But I do think that, the healing for them would come from, like you said earlier, recognizing their own worth. And that can come, the therapist is going to try very hard to try to get that person to recognize their own worth. The other thing we have to recognize here, in terms of mental health, and this is why it's complicated, someone can have more than one thing going on. Person has been victimized by this person who's narcissistic, but the person may also have a history of depression. The person may have an anxiety disorder of their own. The person may have other issues that are layered here. So it's not just simply, how do I wash that man out of my hair? It's also, what else is going on? What's your baseline mental health?
Okay. This was very heavy, but also a very needed. Needed. So before we wrap up, if you had to name 3 red flags that people should never ignore, what would they be? So if you're dealing with someone or going to be going on a date with someone or even in friendships, what are 3, or if you have more, but what are 3 red flags? I know we touched on it on the open, but if I'm seeing this, I should run. What is it?
Okay. I would say the first thing would be feeling like your time and your decisions are being controlled. Why are you doing that? Why are you going with those friends? How long are you going to be? When are you coming back? Why did you spend money on this? You should have spent money on that. How come you signed the kid up for this? I think they should have done. Controlling behaviors. Okay. That's a major red flag.
What about before you go into the relationship? Can we do before, like, to identify before you go into? So if somebody's trying to date me right now,
controlling relationships. Now, sometimes people think they misunderstand control as, isn't that romantic? Okay. That he wants all my time. Okay. No, it's not romantic. It's controlling. So you have to be very careful about not misunderstanding control as sort of sweet. It's not. It's not. Okay.
Somebody that want to spend all their time with you.
Yeah, too much.
Not your friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing to really look out for is someone who can never be wrong. Okay. Has no idea how to apologize. Okay. Apology is not in their vocabulary. And by the way, apologies in general is a topic, because there are many things that are not apologies. For example, well, yeah, I'm sorry I did that, but I did it because you did that. That's not an apology. That's just one example. Okay. So someone who can never be wrong, or always makes you wrong, or always feels they're always right, is another major red flag. That and controlling behaviors are 2 major red flags. Okay. Another one would be something we touched on earlier, which is anything that feels abusive. But again, I have used the word abuse with people. People have come in and talked about maybe something that happened in their childhood that was horrendous. And as a therapist, I try to keep a straight face. But I might say, wow, deliberately use this word. Sounds like abuse. Oh, no, my mother would have never abused me. It was... Okay, the word is triggering something. You feel like it's too strong. What word would you use? And then we talk about it. But any kind of physical or emotional abuse is a red flag. Control is a red flag. The person can never be wrong is a red flag. Those are 3 things, for sure.
One more red flag.
Oh, another red flag might be that lack of empathy. Gee, I
think that's big.
Gee, I'm feeling this way, and they're talking about how they remember feeling worse.
Yes. Oh, wow.
Oh, that doesn't help me.
I had a friend that I had to tell. I said, you lack empathy. You have the empathy of you can't even have an emotional, intelligent conversation. So I was like, it has to be something that happened when you were younger that you just put up a wall. Like, okay, this is it. Because empathy, I feel empathy at a certain age, if I'm right or wrong, like 7 to 8, 9, those age is when you start building.
Well, you definitely want a well-developed conscience.
Yes.
By certainly 12. Long ago, there was a study by a man named Lawrence Kohlberg who did a study on conscience. And he found that there were adults who only felt like something was wrong if they got caught. Now, that's like age 9, 10.
Okay.
It's only wrong if I get caught is like 9, 10. So there's full-blown adults running around. Some of them are running the world. And it's only wrong if they get caught. Yeah. It's only wrong if the judge says, you're going to go to jail. Yeah. There's no moral...
Consciously, there's no
moral conscience,
yes.
right?
Whew. This conversation remind me that, narcissists and narcissism is just not a buzzword. It's a complex pattern
Yes.
that has real consequences and leaves real scars.
Yes.
Noel, I want to thank you for joining. Is there anything you want to leave with us? I've never been with, I'm not married to a narcissist. I've been friends with narcissistic people, but I cannot even imagine what it is to be married to someone that feels like, I am king of all, and I'm the only person that exists, or everyone else is beneath me.
Yeah.
That ego-driven, egotistical behavior, I cannot even imagine.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to anyone going through that. And please seek professional help. If you're going through something, dating a narcissist, married to a narcissist, that's even worse.
Yes. Well, I guess I'd like to leave everybody with this. This does occur on a continuum. There are people who are, maybe annoyingly selfish at times, or my way or the highway at times, but they don't have a full-blown disorder. You want to be able to work with them. All of us sometimes do things that are non-relational, but someone who's truly narcissistic, has things going on that they may not be willing to budge on, and that's problematic.
Okay. Woo! These conversations remind us that narcissism is deeper than a buzzword. It's a complex pattern that can leave real scars, but with the right awareness, therapy, and support, people can heal and rebuild stronger. Noelle, thank you again for your insight and for making this conversation real for us. And to our listeners, if you've been touched by narcissism in your relationship, workplace, or real life, please know that you are not alone. Therapy, community, and self-work are powerful tools in reclaiming your self-worth. This has been Both Sides of the Bed with Kemesha. And remember, I am not a therapist. I am not a life coach. This space is to give you the real and have honest conversation. Until next time, protect your peace and continue growing in your spaces.